Hello there. My name is Jonathan Friedman, and you are listening to Five Facts by EHN Canada. This is a show where we scour the internet for the most frequently asked questions about mental health and addiction and ask an expert for their answers to them. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest, Susan Raphael. Susan Raphael is the founder of Sustainable Recovery Counseling in Toronto, specializing in addiction recovery for teens, young adults, and parents. She's a referral clinician with the NBA NBPA Clinicians Network and is internationally certified by the CACCF. Susan holds an honors degree from York University and pursued graduate studies at the University of Toronto. Her lived experience with addiction informs her compassionate, practical approach. She's the author of What's Wrong with My Teen and has been featured on the Ben Mulroney Show and the Recovering Out Loud podcast. Susan, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm doing really great this morning.
So glad to hear it. Um, as I mentioned before, this is Five Facts. We're going to get into five really big questions around addiction and the family system. Before we get there, I want to ask you, of all the spaces in the world, why did you choose this space of mental health care and addiction?
I think, honestly, it chose me. I always love deep thinking and intensity. I studied philosophy and then psychology and decided to focus in psychology. And that was all prior to my experience with my own mental health and addictions and my own recovery. So when I did find recovery, I thought, I want to work in something that I feel really passionate about. And I had an informational interview and they ended up hiring me. And that was at the treatment center that I went to, Renaissance. And I've been involved with them ever since. So that's since 1999. And then I started in administration, but because of my love for counseling, I always saw myself as a counselor. I was the friend that listened to everybody's problems. And then I was a bartender and kind of quiet myself, not so much anymore. And I loved listening to other people, and I loved solutioning and, problem solving. So that mixed with my own recovery, I started getting my certification. And I didn't know I was going to become a counselor at that time, but I always encourage people, just keep following the path and leave the doors open. You never know what's going to happen. And so I did become a counselor and found my way into a private practice that I love, and I love the people that I get to work with. And I hope that answers your question.
It sure does. I think that's a fantastic answer. And I've had a chance to read a good chunk of your book, and it sounds like you're in
Excellent.
the right place.
Yes, thank you. I don't know what else I'd be doing, but it does feel like the right place. And at the same time, I like challenges and I like to keep growing. That's part of my recovery journey. And so, writing the book was a piece of that. How to take my message and take my skills to an amplified level so that I don't burn out as a clinician, because that's something that we talk about a lot in this field and profession is compassion fatigue, burnout, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, the episode I recorded a couple weeks ago, I'm not sure if you know them, Jen Foot, that episode should be out by now already.
Yeah, I know,
Um,
Jen.
and that was a big part of our conversation was compassionate care and compassion fatigue. So huge topic. Could get
It sure
another eight
is. It
podcast
sure is.
episodes.
Yes, for those of us that are, I learned this term on the weekend, moreish. We like more of things. So sometimes too much work is not a good thing. So balancing that, pacing, learning. I've learned that over the years I've been doing this.
Amazing. So, Susan, I'm really excited to have you on the show. For those of you who are new to the show, my background personally is as a child and youth counselor. So when I heard that I get to talk to somebody about what's wrong with their teen and teen addiction and family systems, this is something I'm really interested into. So, Susan, if you're ready, we're going to get down into the internet's biggest questions around
Let's
addiction and
go.
the family system. Let's
Let's go.
go. So, our first question together is, what can addiction or mental health concerns look like in teenagers? How can they present?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a question I get asked a lot. What are the signs and how do we know? And, to be quite honest, I don't have my own teens. And the teens that come to me have often been on the front page of a crisis in the news, or they have had a legal charge and they're calling from a lawyer's office, or I'm being called by a psychiatric department to come and do an assessment of someone who's in a state of psychosis. So I don't actually deal with typical teens. But when I scoured my research for my book, I do have some charts, really easy to understand, of typical teen behavior. So the teen years are years of great change, from even preteens to about 25. The brain's still developing, so there's a lot of change going on. High school, hybrid schools, all the different mediums that kids have today as they're growing up. But typical teen behavior is that a lot of change, but nothing too dramatic or sudden. When we see problematic behavior, it's amped up, and it could be over the summer. A young person changes friends, starts isolating, or changes their behavior drastically. And over time, it can also look like chronic decline. And that can be hard for parents to notice and caregivers to notice because it's happening sort of slowly. But it's this, instead of that thriving and amping up into life, they're kind of going, they're lagging, they're stuck, they're stalling, that kind of thing. Mental health and addictions do tend to emerge in the teen years. So, for example, first onsets of psychosis symptoms usually happens in the teen years or the early 20s, and substances can accelerate that or trigger that, activate those kinds of symptoms. So, does that answer the question, or do you want some more indicators?
No, absolutely. I think that that's a great answer to the question. And I guess I wonder, for the parents listening to this episode who, might not have a clinical background, what are the things that they should start to notice? What are
Hmm.
the telltale signs that, it might not even be addiction, but something is changing in their teen?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like to say behaviors tell us a story. So if behaviors start to change, sleep, appetite, hygiene, smell, you're smelling substances, cash, that type of thing, they're asking for more money, facilitating a change in behavior that would involve substances, would involve needing means for that. Their parents know their child the best, so they're going to be able to. And I ask them that right away in my first session: is what are you seeing? What are the behaviors you're seeing? What are the symptoms you're seeing? Don't give me your interpretation of or what you think they have or diagnostically. Tell me what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, and tell me what has you the most concerned, because you know what average is for your typical teen. Tell me what you're really concerned about: grades, slipping, skipping school, problems with the law, um, that type of thing, problematic behaviors more frequently, not getting along with their siblings, all those kinds of behaviors that are telling us there's something going on that's more than this, but we don't know what the story is, but we know there's something happening.
I love that. So this is going to lead so perfectly into our second question. But as parents, as family members, and even like not in the family system, even with your friends, your partners, we all kind of have knowledge because we spent a lot of time with that individual of a baseline set of behaviors that that individual, that teen has, and
Yes.
there's a shift. Something
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
And
Something changes.
what is the way that we can address that change? What's the conversation that as a parent we see our kid, is asking for more cash, or their grades are slipping, or they're becoming more isolated and just hanging out in the shed all day. What's the conversation?
Mhm.
How do we approach that? Um, yeah, I'm so curious to hear your response.
Yeah, well, these are difficult things, and these kinds of situations terrify parents, particularly if they have in the teenage years. There does tend to be that interdependence developing, so there's not as much healthy communication with teens. So connecting in any way, shape, or form that you can, and connecting not just about what you're seeing that's going kind of wrong or not going in the right direction, but connecting on day-to-day things. How was your day? What's going on? If they're in the shed, go join them in the shed. Have a chat. Bring them a glass of water. Sit down, be in their world. If they're playing a video game, go and interrupt and say, "Let's hang out," or offer them to go walk the dog together. Have that time. A lot of parents tell me it's when they're taking their kids to school or to appointments or to work, something like that, dropping them somewhere that they can have those little, small, short conversations. Bring it up. Say, "Yeah, I really care about you, and I'm noticing that you're struggling." And leave it there. Don't go on and on and on. Just those open-ended, as clinicians, we learn motivational interviewing, which is open-ended questions. Say that you see something, you notice something. Are they okay? And if they say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm fine," leave it, but circle back to it in a different way. If the questions you're asking are not opening up a dialogue, keep at it. And these are great times to pick up a tool like my book, or go to a parent peer support group, just not for problematic behaviors necessarily, but some of these family groups that talk about there's a lot of stress on teens, there's a lot of stress on parents. So opening up your level of awareness and understanding what they might be going through, trying to see it from their perspective, because we can often come in and say they're not doing what we want them to, or they're not where we want them to be. And we have to love the kid that we have, not the kid that we want to have. We have to connect with the kid that we have and the young person that's in our life. Meet them where they're at, not where we want them to be. And parents can often come in with that, through no fault of their own. They're frustrated. They don't understand what it's like to have your brain developing and not quite be all there. Or they may suspect that there's some of these behaviors, and then they're terrified, and they're dealing with their own anxiety and feelings about what they think is going on. So tending to that, and that kind of segues into parents doing their own work, which is the picking up the tools, learning how to have the conversations. I have lots of scripts in my book. I love scripts because it really outlines what needs to be said in a loving and compassionate way rather than a reactive way. Does that give you a sense of having these difficult, challenging conversations and approaches?
It certainly does, and um, I think bringing up that when we approach a converse, like often in these more difficult situations, we actually have a belief about what's going on, and we have our own comfort or discomfort with where we think things are. I love that idea of approaching it from a motivational interviewing lens and teaching that skill, because great, like, truthfully, grades could be slipping for a whole bunch of reasons. It might not be.
Mhm. Mhm.
And asking it as an open-ended question allows your teen to have that opportunity to open up with you or not. But whether they open up with you or not, which you might sort of deem as the goal, I believe that just asking those questions in an open-ended, non-judgmental way shows that you're developing and willing to build a safe space for when they are ready to have that conversation with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, that teen may naturally be defensive when you ask a question in a way that you're not used to asking. And so being curious, like what you've just said, I would say, is being curious. And when we're curious, we're in our prefrontal cortex. We're not coming from emotion like, "Oh my God, I think that you're using drugs. And how am I gonna get to the bottom of this?" No, it's that I'm curious, I saw this show about teens using substances, or teens on social media and the anxiety it causes. What are you noticing about that? What are your friends noticing? Just to kind of bring it up, and practicing this age appropriately. If you have a toddler out there, practicing these open-ended kind of questions. And open-ended just means it's not a yes or no answer. It's tell me more about that. Let me know what's going on with you. It's not a yes or no because that's too easy of an out. So open-ended just means we're leaving the floor open for them to tell us what's going on without blame and judgment.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Susan.
My
So
pleasure.
we have, we see our teen, they're going through something, and we've gotten to the point now, and I know we're going to skip quite a few steps, but um, we're at the point now where they're in treatment or they're in therapy. They're starting to be in that, in that place. What are ways that parents should be, or what's your advice to parents around taking care of themselves when their teen is going through this process?
Mhm.
Especially when we know, relapse happens, crisis happens, and with teens too, like you mentioned, their brains are still developing. There are a lot of different possibilities of where things can go.
Absolutely. So learning about that, getting some addiction, mental health specific learning. There's terrific family programs out there. If it's a reputable treatment program, it will have a family component. Do that. Take their suggestions. Take what you like, leave the rest. It's Al Anon programs that are support groups for loved ones of someone who's going through a substance use disorder. They have parent and caregiver Al-Anon family group focuses, so those are terrific. Finding something in the community and ask your if your child is seeing a counselor, ask them what they recommend. Learning the language of recovery is important, and learning the language of addiction, or now as we call it, substance use disorders. Understanding the continuum of care, understanding the progression of addiction and also the progression of recovery. I have some documents on my website that have glossary terms, some simple terms defined. There's great resources out there. There really are a lot of resources out there. So finding parent groups that support mental health and addiction, not just other disorders or other illnesses, sort of treatment-specific things, and also a lot of self-care. Like, this is a time to put your own oxygen mask on first, and if your child is in a framework of recovery, in a framework of accountability, either away at a center, um, adolescent centers like Pine River have great resources for parents, families for addiction recovery, great resources for parents. EHN has great resources for family members um, when they're going through the treatment process. So, yeah, finding, learning, having a parallel process, having your own recovery journey.
It's fantastic. And I guess, can we go a little more deeply into like, if you had, a set of parents come in to you for the first, their first session or two, their kid is at Pine River or somewhere like
Mhm.
going through treatment, and they have their own anxiety. They might be slipping into tough love with their kid. What where do you even begin to build that self care plan? Because if you just told that parent, time to put your own oxygen mask on, it might not
Right.
reach them right away.
Absolutely. So good point, and I'm happy to elaborate on that. So when parents come, they do usually need to kind of exhale if they've gone through crisis. They've been in their own trauma response to their loved one struggling, and they're struggling too. So reconnecting with things that de-stress them, dealing with their own stress level, their own health, catching up on some of those things. When there's other siblings in the family, getting spending time with them because they've been impacted as well by having a sibling that's struggling. So, and then this family component piece, like parents are coming to me now and they've read my book, and I'm finding that that's super helpful because they've got this reference guide. They've got an understanding, and they're leveled up a bit with awareness and with tools. So that's super helpful for me, and they know my language, and they know the language of recovery because I've introduced that to them, and they can start having their own plan. So having a plan always relaxes us. Like, in preparation for this, you sent me a number of questions you might get into. That relaxes me because I'm prepared a little bit. I know the time is when it begins and when it ends. That gives me some containment. That gives me a healthy limit. It helps me understand what's going to happen in that time. So having a plan always helps. The plan could shift, but you've got a plan. So, for example, if they're anticipating what's going to happen when their child comes home from treatment, well, let's talk about that. Let's stay in the day, but also let's address your concerns. Let's address your anxiety. And sometimes it's their anxiety that we need to unpack. It's not actually something that's going to happen. It's their anxiety. Where does that come from? What's fueling that? Did you read something? Did you experience something that's activating a fear response? So we have to unpack a lot of what's going on for the parent, and that's their own history, their own personal history. Um, yeah, it's very interesting. It's very challenging too to really get them to look at. They've been so focused on their child in this family system that to step back and look at what are they struggling with? Where are they stuck? Where do they need to move forward to? Maybe they need to let go a little bit and practice some self-care and not be there all the time and not be worried about it all the time. Maybe they need to get a good night's sleep. For so many parents, that's the goal. I want a good night's sleep. I don't want to be worrying. I don't want to be getting phone calls in the middle of the night. I want to be able to get my sleep or go to swimming. And so we'll focus on that. Well, how are you going to get there?
That's interesting. And I think when there's crisis or really distressing situations, we tend to sort of put on autopilot, especially as
Uh-huh.
parents, because we want
Uh-huh.
to help our kid get through that. And by the time you've spent 1, 2, 3, 4, however long months of being on autopilot, get to a point where you do experience that fatigue, that burnout, and uh, taking time to work with someone like yourself and pay mind to what are the things that you need to do sort of helps to break that autopilot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people would express it as a codependency that I've been so wrapped up in my loved ones' illness that when they go away, go into withdrawal management, detox, or treatment, I'm like going through withdrawal because I've been so connected to their system. So it's an opportunity to step back into my own life and and also like practice self-care but be modeling that. So when you're having those family calls, we went away for the weekend. We took the dog for a walk. We signed up for this parent course. Often parents are reluctant to share that they're going to see a professional or that they're in a parent group. Share it. It's great. Even if it terrified me when my parents told me they were going to family program because I was like, I don't know why it terrified me, but I was like, uh-oh, they're going to learn stuff. This is not good for me and my disease of addiction. This is not going to be good for me somehow. Because I guess I knew that I was BSing them a lot of the time, and we were enmeshed in unhealthy ways. So they did learn, and I bought into recovery, so it wasn't so problematic. But tell your kids what you're doing for self-care. Tell them that you've got to deal with your own stress, and it's not about them. They're not the cause of your stress, but they are stressed, and they need to deal with it. It's their responsibility. That could be helpful for teens to hear that teens do feel a lot of guilt, shame, or remorse what they're putting their family through. They may not show that to the parents, but they tell it to us clinicians. So we need to separate from that and say, you know, you're you're not making me anxious. I've got some anxiety. It's from the situation. It's not about you. Don't personalize it. And to show them that you can deal with your feelings and they don't have to deal with your feelings too on top of everything else.
That's great role modeling.
Yes, it's excellent role modeling. Excellent. And a lot of parents are so focused on the kids that they don't know how to deal with their own feelings. It's all about, yeah, the kids caused it. The kids, and the kid feels that they energetically they can feel that when they're being held responsible for the family being in a struggle.
Yeah, kids, teens are really,
Oh,
really intelligent. They just don't
really
always have
smart.
the most practiced communication skills to tell you what's going on, but
Yeah.
they feel like if you're feeling anxious and you're, showing tough love, or you yourself are removing yourself from conversations that could be tougher, you're showing that you're not necessarily that first go-to place where they can feel safe. So showing like, "Hey, I've actually been feeling anxious. I'm doing these things to take care of myself, and I wanna have these conversations with you. Maybe I'm having a bit of a tough day. Let's talk in a couple of hours." You're showing them that, like, 1, they're not alone. It's something that lots of people go through in many different ways, and 2, that you're there with them. You're willing to be strong and have potentially uncomfortable, very difficult conversations with them.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. And that it's okay to be uncomfortable. We can all be so reluctant to show that we're uncomfortable, and we try to cover it up or mask it or pretend that everything's okay. It's like, what's wrong with just saying I'm really uncomfortable right now, and I'm going to go do some breathing or take a walk to get grounded into my body and out of this discomfort.
amazing. So let's take time to talk through one last question, which is,
Okay.
which I imagine is like a really uncomfortable, big transition for people when, your teen is coming back from treatment, or maybe they were doing an at home program and they're starting to reintegrate more back into school, back with their friends. Um, One, how does that transition, what do you see? How does it affect the teen? And also, how does it affect the family? What can families do? What can teens do to sort of understand what's going to happen in that transition and make it easier or feel better?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. It's a really important part of treatment too, that we're working towards continuing care, aftercare, whatever you're going to call it. That we often hear that the work begins at home. So it's a understanding, and a good program will do this, that the family is a system, and everybody has roles within that system. And when there's been illness or a disorder, the family system changes, and everybody kind of adapts to that. So when someone goes away to treatment and maybe the family members don't get support, they're all kind of, the metaphor is dancing to the old music, and the individual that's gone to treatment, the kids teen that's gone to treatment, is learning all these new skills, and they're dancing to a new song. So when they come back into the home, it's going to be very difficult. But if continuing care plans have included the family, often there's a home treatment plan, an aftercare plan, you'll hear contract, um, basically a plan to acknowledge the change that's happened and what everybody in the household is going to be doing to take care of themselves. So it's no one's fault that they have addiction and mental health struggles. It is everyone's responsibility to manage them now that we all know what's going on. So the parents need to manage their stuff, and the teen has to manage their stuff, and the siblings have to manage what's come up for them. So everyone getting the support they need. But usually I see that happening through a framework of accountability. And I talk about this in my book too. It doesn't have to be super complex, but an understanding of what everybody's roles and responsibilities are now, and a really good kind of relapse prevention, and loved ones can relapse too. They can go back into policing, monitoring. I need you to drug test every day, or I am not going to be okay. That sort of thing. So, and having the professional support, having these positive peer support groups. They don't always have to be private. There's lots of low barrier places to get support if you can't afford, kind of individual therapy, because addictions is not regulated yet. We don't always have coverage And so it can be expensive, but we also pay for other things, and these are very important things to have on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I think that in any big change, often, and whether or not you're quite saying it, a lot of people feel like, like it used to be different though. And
Oh, yeah. Mm,
this, especially in crisis, um, with a family member, the system is now a different system. And it can get further different in the future. But for us to sustain and support that recovery, we all need to do X, Y, Z in this way. And that's not going to be easy for many of us. That's a new skill too. And it's about
absolutely.
accessing our um, professional social supports like therapy, but also non professional supports and having conversations with your friends, other family members, with that immediate family. Um, that helps
Mhm.
one feel safe, feel comfortable, and also supports you in your own journey through your kid's journey.
Exactly, and, you can have family meetings. You don't always need a professional facilitating it. Check-ins, "How are we doing?" What I find is when people are following the plan kind of fades back into the background. But if people are resisting the plan, then we have to bring it in, follow get more into following the guidelines, the rules, the limits, and that might be new for family members to be holding these limits, and new to have the teen pushing boundaries that maybe prior didn't exist. So everyone's learning these new things. But if they've gone to treatment and learned some of these skills, they're going to be more approachable. But they're also, they teens can be defensive, and they're going to push against new limits and boundaries. So that's okay. It's okay if your teen is upset with you. It's okay if they don't like the rules. That's okay. You can validate that, but there's still that rule for today. It might change next week, but for today, there's that rule, that guideline.
So I have one more question, and this wasn't a part of the official 5 questions, but I love to
Okay.
every one of my guests. Um, if you were to give a piece of advice, and I'd love if you could share with your piece of advice to a teenager who hasn't yet started their recovery journey, what piece of advice would you give them, or a small tidbit about starting their recovery journey?
I learned so much from my teen clients. They can be so open and honest and willing. It's part of what drew me to working with this population. They so just to stay that way, to stay find that person that you can be honest and open and willing to hear, listen, which we learn that acronym is kind of the how to, that there's many paths to recovery. It's not linear. It's not just, woo, we start here and we go and we succeed and we graduate. No, it's not like that. It's a bumpy ride, but being open and being willing and looking for that encouragement, asking for what you need and finding that person that you can connect with to support you in your journey, um, at least, temporarily till you find the next person. Like, is that helpful?
I think that's very helpful, Susan.
Yeah.
You so much. And as we round the corner, where can people learn more about you, the work you do?
Yeah.
This awesome book over here.
Yeah, yeah, well, they can find my book anywhere books are sold, What's Wrong with My Teen, and, if the bookstore doesn't have it, please ask for it. Ask your library. Um, it is on the indie author, website too, and then you can find me on my website, what'swrongwithmyteen.com, and my, handles are Susan Raphael at Sustainable Recovery, so sustainable__ recovery at Instagram, and I've got some useful tools and things on there. Sign up for my newsletter, all that jazz.
All that.
Love to hear from you.
We're going to link all of those in the comments below in the show notes. Uh,
Super.
Susan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Likewise,
And
Jonathan, thank you
we'll
so much.
we'll see you next time.